Tonight's program is a way for us to come together to honor the stories of people living with HIV and AIDS, as well as those we've lost. There are approximately 38 million people currently living with HIV worldwide, and we have lost millions more to the AIDS epidemic. Later in the program, we will highlight the upcoming Through Positive Eyes, My Photo, My HIV Story virtual exhibition at the Gates Foundation Discovery Center, and we'll hear from Bill Hall and Positively Positive, two artivists or artists who are also activists, as they each share their personal stories of living with HIV. You'll also hear community leaders speak about their organizations and how to get involved, including AARTH, which stands for African Americans Reach and Teach Health Ministry, Entre Hermanos, PCAF, and POCAAN, formerly known as People of Color Against the AIDS Network. But before we get to that, we'll start tonight's program with a dedication of the first completed artwork for the AMP, AIDS Memorial Pathway, by artist-poet Storme Webber. The AMP is being created on Capitol Hill in Seattle, and its permanent artworks will provide a place of reflection, remembrance, inspiration, and education. To give an overview of the AMP, let's hear from a few people.
Hello, and thank you for sharing this important milestone with us in the creation of the AMP, the AIDS Memorial Pathway, Seattle's historic AIDS Memorial. The AMP is a public art installation created by a collective of passionate volunteers and community leaders, including people living with HIV, people of color, and LGBTQIA+ people.
The AMP idea emerged out of a desire to honor those lost and acknowledge our community's response to the AIDS crisis. The goals of the project are to create a place to honor those who died, those who fought, and those who continue the fight against HIV/AIDS today.
The AMP is designed to take visitors through an emotional and historic journey related to the AIDS epidemic in our region from the early 1980s to today. The three goals of the AMP are: use public art to create a physical place for reflection and remembrance, use technology to share stories of the epidemic and the diverse community responses to the crisis, provide a call to action to end HIV/AIDS stigma and discrimination.
Tom Rasmussen, a Seattle City Council member at the time, became aware of the growing desire for a place for remembrance, education, and inspiration surrounding the AIDS health crisis and the community's ongoing response. A team of volunteers was enlisted to outline the scale, location, timeline, and other project components to realize the construction of the AMP, AIDS Memorial Pathway.
The AMP has a $2.8 million budget. With the support of city, county, and state governments, local businesses and organizations, and individual donors, we continue our efforts to reach our financial goals. The AMP's artworks are located at the northern edge of Cal Anderson Park, the adjacent public plaza, and the community room atop the Capitol Hill light rail station.
The AMP features 4 commissioned artworks, including a centerpiece sculpture in the plaza by Christopher Paul Jordan. Groupings of connecting artworks throughout the site by design team Civilization. Pieces for reflection and remembrance in Cal Anderson Park by Horatio Hongyan Law, and artwork within the Station House Community Room by Storme Webber.
In conjunction with the artworks, recordings of the stories of those impacted by HIV/AIDS, especially within communities of color, are integrated into the AMP. The history of HIV/AIDS in Seattle, King County, and our state includes organizations and individuals with a wide variety of experiences and identities. By sharing these stories in our collection, we strive to promote historical awareness, encourage empathy, and eventually end stigma, discrimination, and HIV/AIDS itself.
Though building the art pieces began with the 2020 completion date, the COVID-19 pandemic and construction delays now push the AMP completion into 2021.
The AMP is a large endeavor and a gift to Seattle and the Northwest.
The AMP is a place to remember, to grieve, and to inspire action.
Please join us with your support so we can educate, inspire, and honor our communities with the AMP. AIDS Memorial Pathway.
If you want to learn more or make a donation to support the AMP, you can visit theamp.org. That's THEAMP.org. As mentioned, the first artwork for the AMP is now complete. It's located in the Station House building, owned by Community Roots Housing and the Kathy Hillenbrand Community Room. Community Roots Housing will own and maintain the artwork for years to come. Let's visit the room now, where we'll enjoy a musical dedication and introduction by Tory Trujillo and listen to Storme Webber describe her artwork entitled "In This Way We Loved One Another."
The AMP acknowledges that we are on Indigenous land and the traditional territory of Coast Salish peoples, specifically the First People of Seattle, the Duwamish people past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe.
Today, on World AIDS Day, we celebrate the dedication of the first artwork created for the AMP, Storme Webber's "In This Way We Loved One Another." Storme Webber is a Two-Spirit Seelbach Black Choctaw poet and artist. Her work is cross-genre, collaborative, and exploratory, engaging us with ideas of history, lineage, gender, race, and sexuality. She has received numerous honors and residencies, including from Hedgebrook, Ragdale, and Banff Arts Center, along with being a recipient of the James W. Ray Award.
Hello, I'm thrilled to share with you my artwork, "In This Way We Loved One Another." I wanted the artwork to be an historical remediation, restoring missing narratives of working class activists, healers, leaders, witnesses, and ancestors lost to the AIDS crisis. HIV and AIDS continue to affect communities of color globally, most specifically Black communities. In this project, we lift up the lives of people who transformed the world through their work and their struggle, who made a path by walking through racism, homophobia, fear, and structural oppression, and found joy with each other. The subjects at the center of this artwork changed lives by confronting discrimination and building communities of fellowship for activism and for healing. Through these portraits, we discover the ways in which everyday people found collective power in unity and together made change. There are also quotes from people I interviewed from their experiences of decades of community building. They're on the windows so that people passing can benefit from their wisdom and their inspiration. On the wall is a piece I wrote connected to the history of HIV in our community. Elegy Manifesto. Pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living. Maxine lives here still, eternal, expansive, and sacred, as do the Duwamish peoples and those pre-liberation gay girls and boys making their way to the square yet again, where they live by night upon night. Time fell over us as it does, brought us past Stonewall, where we rose up, stepped away from shadow into varied light, where we saw each other without shame, came together into Coyote, leftist lesbies, radical women, dykes against racism everywhere, babes, Chicken Soup Brigade, Act Up, POCAAN, Sojourner Truth Ministries, Seattle Counseling Service for Sexual Minorities, Lesbian Resource Center, Northwest AIDS Foundation, Sister to Sister, Brother to Brother, Spaces of Resistance and Relation, Palimpsest of Liberation, generation upon generation. Pat looks into the mirror one last time and sails out armored in complicated beauties. We stand upon the shoulders of those warriors before us. Buddy's smile opens my road and I can see clear, this especially for us now and those yet to be, past, present, future worlds. Remember the butchers all buying leather jackets at the Army-Navy surplus that day, so the men who raided our bars on the regular would know who to fight. See the Alaskan Native woman who warriored her way down these streets, knives in every pocket, 2 in her boots, so that our road be eased. I believe marginalized peoples have the most to offer a society because they open the society to a larger world. So in considering the AIDS crisis and how the community rallied here in Seattle, I was drawn to the stories of Black people, marginalized people, sex workers, IV drug users, poor people, working class people. And again, all of these people's lives were interwoven, and they were chosen because they represent a powerful spirit of resistance, of community, of love, of pride. People who managed to take judgments that society had turned against them and transform them into a strength to create collective power. My research led me to people like Reverend Gwen Hall, who founded the Sojourner Truth Ministries, to reach out to everyone, especially those who are excluded from spiritual care, from consolation, from access to resources. The first image that you see is Reverend Gwen Hall officiating the wedding of Patrick Haggerty and Julius J.B. Broughton. Patrick Haggerty is a lifelong Marxist who's called the grandpappy of gay country. His album Lavender Country came out in the early 70s, and during that time and since then and before then, he's been struggling for peace and social justice. Very active in the anti-racism movement, very active in the feminist movement, and of course in the cultural movement. His partner, J.B. Broughton, was a Navy veteran of 20 years still working for the Navy at the time he became involved with ACT UP. And his quote and what he wanted to share with everyone is that it's never too late to become an activist. And the next person we see is P. Catlin Forward. P. Catlin Forward is a brilliant activist and strategist who founded, along with Cassis Jones and others, founded POCAAN, People of Color Against AIDS Network. She created a really strong team of people who were, by and large, excluded from the mainstream. She said there was a joke that anything that wouldn't get you hired anywhere else would get you hired at POCAAN. She created a great sense of camaraderie within the team. The next image, continuing on to the right, are two sisters, Alia Messiah and Sheila Robinson. Alia is a tremendously loving community person who's worked for POCAAN now for decades and always done a special outreach to the mothers and the children, especially Black mothers and children. Alia was one of the first people to join POCAAN and to continue with that particular focused outreach. Sheila Robinson, as you read in her bio, came from a really challenging life of struggle arising from trauma she'd experienced. But she took that life and she determined to help others like herself. She also was working hand in hand with the CDC. She taught them how to do outreach to people who were at risk on the streets. And finally, on the far right, someone who's felt like a particular angel of this project the entire time, Mr. Cassis Jones. When he was diagnosed as HIV positive, he was discharged from the service, and he decided to come back to Seattle and work as hard as he could on behalf of AIDS survivors and those at risk. So he worked on numerous campaigns, including the Bailey Boucher House, POCAAN. He was integral in starting Brother to Brother, making safe spaces for Black people impacted by AIDS and HIV in the 1980s. I'd like to express my deepest gratitude for the people who participated, who shared their lives, who are shown on these walls, and to the generosity of Catherine Alfred Gerlich, who funded this artwork, and Kathy Hillebrand, whose advocacy helped make this community room possible, and whose this room is named in honor of. I hope you will come by the Station House building and see, in this way, we loved one another.
I have to say, in this way, I loved hearing Tory's musical dedication, and I loved learning about the artwork. And having seen the artwork myself, I can tell you it's amazing. I encourage you all to see it. Now, one of the people featured in the artwork's photographs is Patrick Haggerty, who co-founded the band Lavender Country. The band is here with a performance to commemorate the completion of In This Way We Loved One Another. Take it away, Lavender Country.
Nothing left but home in your weary Texas roam. Time to trade them old PJs for goodwill negligence. Y'all come out, my dears, to Lavender Country. Y'all come out, make yourself to home. It don't matter here who you love or what you wear. We don't care who's got what chromosome. Shed them male cocoon, spit out them silk spoon. Get yourself some pantaloons and a pair of water balloons. And y'all come out, my dears, to Lavender Country. Don't you bother about your silly ways. When you wear your pretty blouse to the people's outhouse, folks will hang around in paper days. So y'all come out, my dears, to Lavender Country. Y'all come out and make yourselves at home. your soldier home. It don't matter here who you love or what you wear. We don't care who's got what chromosome. A woman humming, stripping down a cannon. Be a warrior, strumming around and strumming lullaby. Y'all come out, my dears, to lavender country. Sashay out and give all away a try. Whether you tuck in or dangle, when you hear that fat tango, you'll just spread your spangled wings and fly. Oh, y'all come out, my dears, to lavender country. Y'all come out, make yourself at home. It don't matter here who you love or what you wear. We don't care who's got what chromosome. Give it another one, Tammy. Come out, my dears, to lavender country. Y'all come out to make yourselves at home. It don't matter here who you love or what you wear. We don't care who's got what chromosome. So y'all come out, my dears, to lavender come out, my dears. Come on.
Oh, thank you, Lavender Country, for creating and sharing such fabulous music. And Patrick, thank you for those fantastic boots. So, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's work on HIV/AIDS began in the earliest days of the Foundation's philanthropic journey. Today, the Foundation focuses on discovering, developing, and delivering affordable tests and treatments that can prevent new HIV infections and save lives. The Foundation's efforts are directed toward people in places where funds are insufficient and where support can have an impact that can uplift countless people. Please follow the links in the chat to read more about the Foundation's work. And speaking of work, let's hear from local community leaders about their organization's work and how to get involved, including AARTH, African Americans Reach and Teach Health Ministry, Entre Hermanos, PCAF, and POCAAN, originally called People of Color Against AIDS Network.
My name is Stephen Sawyer. I am the current executive director of POCAAN. POCAAN is a 32-year-old ASO that have grown to do other work. Today we have 11 programs serving 1,600 individuals in the King County area. And I think what we've learned, the lessons we learned, that as we really outreach and target the affected populations, the work that needs to be done really needs to be done by folks that are in that community and have really a working knowledge, right, of what they need to connect, but also to get them in and help them to understand what they need to be done to be healthy. And I think that's such an important lesson. And we've done some great work in Seattle, but I think that piece is a piece that we still have to do around cultural relevance.
Hi, my name is Joel Aguirre, and I've been working for Entre Hermanos for the last 20 years. Entre Hermanos started as a community organization when the pandemic of AIDS. Ever since we are working around prevention, and we have extended our services to legal matters and worker rights and more around things that impact our community. So it's been 29 years. Next year is going to be 30 years of the organization working with the Latino community, mainly focused on the LGBTQ community. Something we have learned is to work with other organizations that is being called network. But I prefer to say that a net that works is better. When we come together with a common goal, we can achieve a great success serving the population that we serve, which is people living with HIV.
My name is Erick Seelbach. I serve as the Executive Director of PCAF. We are working to end the HIV epidemic in the South Sound. We take care of people living with HIV, prevent the spread of HIV, and fight HIV-related stigma. When I think about the lessons that we can learn from our history with HIV, the first thing that comes to mind is remembering the strength and resilience of our communities, that it was really communities coming together to take care of each other that helped us get through the epidemic and continues to help us. That we need to look at science and understand the science of whatever it is we're dealing with, and then we remember that our voices are powerful as we advocate for policies that support our communities. Thank you.
I'm Reverend Mary Diggs-Hobson. I'm one of the co-founders of African Americans Reach and Teach Health Ministry. And really our name defines who we are and those we serve, which are people of the African diaspora. It also identifies our mission, which is improving the health of our people. We began in 2002 when AIDS and stigma were killing our people, devastating our relationships, and really our ancestral and generational responsibilities to care for and about the ones that we love. I think there's really one big lesson when it comes to HIV, as with COVID, that when one suffers, everyone suffers. We're all connected. And so the greatest job that we have today and in the future is putting in place the laws, the systems, and the enforcement structures to make it a reality where equitable health care is a human right and not a privilege.
High praises to our partner organizations for their heartfelt words and for all the work they do in our communities. Now, we turn to the upcoming Discovery Center exhibition, Through Positive Eyes, My Photo, My HIV Story. Through Positive Eyes is a storytelling project and traveling museum exhibition that has empowered more than 140 people living with HIV/AIDS in 11 cities around the world to tell their story by using their own words and images. We call our participants Artivists, part artist, part activist. The exhibition coalesces around one core tenet, the belief that challenging stigma against people living with HIV/AIDS is the most effective method for combating the spread of the virus. Through Positive Eyes is organized by the UCLA Art and Global Health Center and is co-curated by David Geer, director, UCLA Art and Global Health Center and founder of Make Art Stop AIDS. Carol Brown, independent curator, and Stan Pressner, exhibition designer. Tonight, we're going to hear from two artivists, and to help with this portion of the program, I'm now joined by Kelly Gleckham. Kelly is an artivist from Los Angeles who moved here to Seattle last month to continue working as project manager for Through Positive Eyes. Hello, Kelly, welcome, welcome.
Hello, hello. Thank you, Rosette. I'm so honored and grateful to be a part of this event. Our cohort of 11 artivists here in Seattle represents an incredibly diverse range of voices. We have men, women, trans, and non-binary identified folks. We have gay, straight, bisexual, and asexual folks. We have Black, white, Cuban American, and Native voices. Our artivists are long-term survivors, folks diagnosed in the current age of effective medications, as well as verticals, meaning those who contracted the virus through childbirth, breastfeeding, or other ways in the first years of life. They range from 28 years of age to almost 70. And although each Artivist is unique in their perspective and experience, what they all have in common is how profoundly powerful and important their story is to share with the world. The pieces they've created so eloquently give voice to critical issues such as HIV criminalization, disability justice, childhood sexual violence, intimate partner violence, and so much more. I'm overflowing with pride and excitement for the work that they've created. The two stories you're about to witness are a great representation of our theme this evening: stories of the past, stories of the present. First is Bill Hall, a long-term survivor and elder in the Native community. He reminds me a lot of my late father, actually, in the sense that he's a dignified man of few words. But when he speaks, you want to listen because every word that comes out of him is meaningful and said with thoughtful intention. His story, while intensely personal, is emblematic of Native experience in this country, and we must listen with open hearts and a learning mind.
The story of my life, sadly, is not a unique one in Native American culture. This story can be told in 1,000 different ways, each story representing a person who suffered the same upbringing I did as a child, expressing deep emotional and mental scars and insurmountable pain. The trauma that we suffered was our being taken away from our families when we were young and placed in government boarding schools. I was 9 years old when my sister and I were taken, and what made this such a traumatic experience for me was that I had never been away from my family before. So fear and loneliness consumed me. I come from a small fishing village in Alaska called Tuna. It is a sleepy little village nestled at the base of a mountain, surrounded by the vast beauty that is Alaska. It was a place where everybody knew each other, and we generally cared and watched out for each other, a rare trait these days. There was no telephone or TV, so to fill the time, after dinner was done and the dinner dishes were washed and put away, everyone sat around the living room with their cups of coffee and told stories. This was my favorite time of day. Natives love to laugh, and we are natural storytellers. I hated it when I was told that it was time for bed. When we arrived at boarding school, anything that we brought considered to be native was confiscated. All boys were given a haircut and told this was how our hair was to be kept at all times. We were not allowed to grow our hair long, as this was considered a native trait. Once we were checked in, the rules were given to us, which included our never being able to speak our native language at any time. We were to only speak English. If we broke these rules, we were placed on 2 weeks restriction and assigned extra chores. Later at dinner time, we were taken in groups of 7, and a lady taught us how to properly enter the dining room and how to properly use knives and forks, telling us that we were never allowed to eat like the little savages that we were. But the true nightmare that was boarding school was the sexual abuse of the younger boys by the older boys after lights went out. The first time one of the older boys crawled into bed with me, I thought I was dreaming. It wasn't until my pajama bottoms were shoved down and the older boy entered me did I realize that this was not a dream. The pain I felt was unlike any pain I've ever experienced before, and I fought as hard as I could to get out from under him, but the older boy was just too strong for me. When he was finished, he choked me, almost to the point of blacking out, and sternly whispered in my ear, that if I told any staff about this, he would kill me. Those same boys who crawled into bed with us at night bullied us during the day. They beat us and made fun of us in front of other students. I got used to the sex and I got used to the beatings. What really hurt were the words and the names I was called during the bullying. This went on until I was 12 years old, when I became too old for the older boys. What this ongoing trauma did to those of us who suffered this experience was that it killed their spirit. And as an adult, I could no longer stand to be touched in a sexual manner. At age 67, that is still the case. And because of this, I have lived my life alone, which led to a lifetime of intense loneliness and several suicide attempts. The rules that we were to abide by were designed to turn us into acceptable little white boys and to take the native out of us. And these rules were staunchly enforced. What this taught me was that being native was something to be ashamed of. And after years of instilling these rules in us, it worked. I took on the feeling of shame, and I no longer identified myself as native. In later years, with the loss of my identity, I didn't know where I belonged. I wasn't white, but I no longer considered myself native either. I spent my life searching for my place in the world. On the brighter side, my heart knew that I was native, as every time I heard drumming, my heart would turn towards it. Needless to say, my life became a vicious cycle of depression, failure, and loss. How could anyone who didn't know who they were succeed? It wasn't until I became HIV positive in 1986 did my life begin to change, which literally took a lifetime of therapy to get where I am today. My journey to becoming an advocate for the Native American community and HIV, I have come to believe, was by design. I started by volunteering for various AIDS organizations, which led to my joining community advisory boards, which exposed me to a vast education on AIDS, research, and how services for people living with AIDS came into being. Through my involvement with these groups, I came to realize that the reason Native Americans were the most underserved community with regard to HIV was that no one was speaking up. This bothered me, and when Defeat HIV, a group I was involved with, asked me to approach the Seattle Indian Health Board to let us come and do a presentation on cure research for HIV, I saw just how strong stigma on HIV was in Native country. Native communities believed that HIV was the gay disease, and our communities never even acknowledged that we existed. It took 3 years and the hiring of a new executive director who was very pro-AIDS for us to get our break. It was during the planning of our first event that God began to tug at my heart to step up and take on the role of advocate. No matter what excuses I came up with, the tugging never stopped. I had heard about these 3 Native women who contracted HIV, and they were so ashamed and frightened that if anyone found out, they would be disowned not only by their communities, but from their families as well. That they never sought treatment, and because of this, they died. When I heard about the first one, I thought, that's sad. Later, when I heard about the second, it gave me pause. When I heard about the third, it stunned me. I sat for a long period of time thinking about the fears and anxiety that these women live through. And having lived through them myself, I knew how paralyzing those fears could be. It was these women that I was thinking about as we were finalizing the agenda for our event. And just as we were about to wrap up the meeting, I anxiously thought, this is it. It's now or never. And I blurted out, I want to do the welcome. And with that, I stepped into the light.
All right. So let's take a deep breath after that one. Bill's story always, hits me at my heart. So awesome. So next we have Positively Positive. Pause is an artist whose bright energy and bold style speaks for itself. They are a hustler in the true sense of the word, and I've had so much fun working with, being challenged by, and learning from their unique creative approach and beautiful vulnerability. Now please lean in with me to enjoy the rhythmic stylings of Positively Positive.
Hello everyone, my name is Positively Positive. I am a spoken word poet and a hip hop artist. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. My presentation is divided into 4 sections. The first 3 sections are spoken word poems in hip hop music. The last section is an essay that I wrote about my life. Poem 1, The Generational Context of HIV. 1989, my mom gave birth to the child Phoenix 9 years after the AIDS pandemic. 90s, Black was not the thing to be. It's rough being on your own when you're feeling all alone like me. A bomb explodes viral, venomous toxins in my own veins. I am the chaos, the genocide in my own dreams. I'm a survivor, a long-term survivor, 31 years with HIV. Headline news do not document me. My story is tragedy. I'm not an 80s baby. I am not the disco. I am not the Soul Train. I am not AZT. I am not Coffins. I am not Ronald Reagan. I'm a 90s baby. Bumping and mixing TLCs, ain't too proud to beg. Reruns of Fresh Prince, colorful hats, oversized pants. Rodney King, a Black man unarmed. N91, brutality police, the only ones with the gun. N94, 800,000 bodies murdered. Rwandan genocide. HIV still happened in the 90s. Modern day society, 2020. Black and brown bodies still buried in those hearses. Stigma. HIV stigma still relevant no matter where your generations be. You are the AIDS pandemic like me. Poem 2, HIV positive at school. I asked my mother a question at the age of 7. What is the meaning of HIV? My mother cried when she disclosed the origins of her AIDS story. I laughed, giggled, happy when my mother told me I'm HIV positive. My HIV was not a trigger at the age of 7. I didn't understand. My life was happy with HIV. Middle school started all the damage. Textbooks and teachers lie. If you have AIDS, you're going to die. I, the only kid in the class with HIV, I didn't disclose my status because of stigma. I didn't donate blood at school. Donating blood was this rite of passage. I lied when my friendships asked, did you donate any blood for the Red Cross? I'm a survivor, a long-term survivor, 31 years with HIV. Poem 3, my HIV story intersects with sexuality. This is a picture of my younger brother and my 2 parents. That is a picture of me wearing yellow. I was the age of 5. Trauma. is my real reason why I do not develop love feelings. My thoughts stay thinking cycles, constant loops like bicycles, calculate in formulas to understand my own sexualities. I am Black, queer, asexual, aromantic, and fluid. I'm a youth-born phoenix. HIV in my arteries, my virus raised me in poverty. Asking myself questions, philosophy, gossiping like Socrates. Did my virus and trauma cause me to be spectrum sexualities, or am I born this way already? Most times I'm not gay enough, queer enough, because I don't date or love enough. Never had love, never wanted love, never been in a relationship. People say I'm Mars like a spaceship alien because I never wanted love, been in love. Got teased, harassed, and ridiculed like a joke. My high school, college, middle school friends and family be all up in my business, trying to hook me up with someone's fly, asking me if I'm dating this guy. Your questions are pervasive, gawking me, teasing me as if being wanted from my body, lust adored, born to desire, consume me. No air left for me to breathe in. I'm gasping for my air. I'm reaching for my queer. I'm never fitting in with these romantic queers. They say to be human, straight, queer, and gay is to follow these 7 rites of passage. Love, come out, have sex, get married, have kids, engage, engage, engage. Romance, romance, romance. People gossip, chatter constantly on and on and on and on and on and on about relationships, partners, lovers, hookups. They never ever pause the conversation to focus on their friend who is lonely and silent, content and complacent. These conversations are deadly. Where do people turn to when no one is listening? This world is built for romance because people struggle hella hard just to build community, reaching for my friends, reaching for my family, reaching for community. I'm constantly reaching, no one's there. I know people are busy. Why is it so hard to have a friendship show up in the city? I told my therapist, what is one thing I want my friendships to know? I want to feel a priority, be a part of someone's day, say, hey, I just want to kick it, watch movies, write poetry through a text message. Tell me about your day. These necessities feels is grounded only to the romance because people struggle hella hard just to build community, reaching for my friends, reaching for my family, reaching for community. I'm constantly reaching, no one's there. I know people are busy. Why is it so hard to have a friendship show up in the city? Section 4. My essay about my life. I was born queer, asexual, aromantic. Sometimes I do wonder if my HIV positive status since birth and my childhood trauma contributed to my asexuality and aromantic identities. I lived 25 years as a survivor dealing with domestic violence. My father was abusive. I lived in poverty. I didn't date because of trauma. I didn't want to experience a romantic relationship because of the abuse from my father. I didn't want to have sex because of my HIV positive status. This is a picture of my friend Rafa, who founded Hidmo, an Eritrean restaurant that served delicious East African meals from Eritrea. This place was a community resource and a community center that hosted open mics, workshops, including youth and elders. This space also connected me to an organization called Youth Speak Seattle, who first introduced me to performance arts, spoken word poetry, hip hop music, and social justice in 2007 when I graduated from high school. Without my friendships I made during Youth Speaks and at the Hidmo, I would have never found my voice. There are people in the world who rely solely on friendship and community support. And community support resources just to survive. I am one of those people. It is sad to witness the trend of romantic supremacy and its failure to recognize the importance of friendship, platonic friendships, and community-centered spaces, which are just as important and vital as romantic relationships. You can make a difference in the relationships you participate in already by just paying more attention to your friends and family. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Pause. Let's go to menti.com again and see the word cloud that has been forming from all of your responses. Again, you can open any web browser app, visit menti.com, MENTI.com, enter the number code 3514767. The link and code are also in the chat. Feel free to continue typing your responses. So how do these stories make you feel? Grateful, inspired, sad, empathy, thought-provoking, empowered. Awesome. These are all wonderful responses. Hopeful, confused. That's okay. You know, stories are supposed to make you think. Stories are, you know, supposed to get your mind working. So confused is not necessarily a bad thing. Powerful, intrigued, thankful, shocking. Yes, absolutely. Moving, hugs. Oh, I love it. Thank you all so much for contributing to this word cloud, giving us your responses. Bill and Pause, I hope you're taking in these wonderful responses to your stories. Remember, folks, these are just 2 of our 11 amazing artivists. We're excited to begin offering virtual tours with the Discovery Center for Through Positive Eyes in January. Our live Artivist storytelling shows are called Banishing Stigma. They include participant engagements around the concept of stigma, a short video, 2 live Artivist stories, and a juicy facilitated Q&A at the end. If you have a group that you'd like to bring for a Banishing Stigma experience, please visit the Discovery Center website. We'd love to engage with you. Now, I would like to introduce the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, the Abbey of St. Joan, who have worked since 1996 in support of the HIV and AIDS community in the form of grants, protests, and street performances, using drag and religious imagery to call attention to sexual intolerance and to satirize issues of gender immorality.
Hello, I am Sister Aliva Martin, the Sister of Perpetual Indulgence of the Abbey of St. Joan.
Sister Marissa Kitt of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, Seattle's Abbey of St. Joan.
I'm Novice Sister Bernabush of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, Abbey St. Joan. Pleased to meet you.
Hope you're all doing well during these crazy times.
May the odds be forever in your favor.
For the last 40 years, the Sisters have worked to raise money and awareness to fight HIV and to support people affected by the virus.
We have called bingo, peddled Easter eggs, and hosted hunky Jesus pageants.
Our calling is taking us around the world, from gay Paris to the outback of Australia.
Wherever we are needed, you will find us in thick grease paint and practical heels.
While the advent of the virus-suppressing treatments has been a blessing on all of us, praise the goddess.
Hallelujah.
The virus has taken far too many souls.
But this virus is still with us, and in particular it has affected women, people of color, and the trans community, particularly trans women.
This year it has company. We have spent 4 decades dealing with one virus. Certainly we put the same strength in dealing with a new one.
And here we stand, masks at the ready, our faces painted,
and with just a touch of glitter.
And some sister magic.
It is World AIDS Day 2020, and while this is a year like none other,
we are here to listen and to pray. We cry, and someday we will hug each other again.
Here we stand, shoulder to shoulder, 6 feet apart.
So, thank you, Kelly, and thank you to the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, Abbey of St. Joan, and thank you to all of our participants. As we come to the end of our program, I want to invite you to participate in a program survey. Just visit menti.com and enter the numbers 8492187. Or if you want the easy route, you can click on the link in the chat. And for more information and ways to take action, check out the link to our Take Action Toolkit in the chat. We also want to let you know that the night is still young, And you can join us on the runway right after this program for Lights, Latex, and Love, a condom couture community competition in support of PCAF. Once again, my name is Rosette Royale, and that's it, except to say thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us this evening. And thank you for honoring all those whose lives have been touched by HIV. I'm so glad we got to spend time together on such an important day. Many blessings to you all. Take care and be well.